Have you ever felt like someone is watching you, even when you're alone? What if you received a message from a stranger claiming you're not alone? Samantha thought she was just dealing with a storm, but the truth was far darker. She found herself trapped in a house where the walls whispered, shadows moved, and a chilling presence waited. What happens when you realize that your worst nightmare isn't something outside, but something that's already inside you? The storm raged outside, its furious winds howling through the trees like a chorus of ghosts in the night. Inside, the old house groaned and creaked as if it were alive, its wooden beams straining against the pressure of the weather. Samantha sat by the window, staring out at the darkness, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was watching her. Her phone buzzed, breaking her from her thoughts. She quickly grabbed it, her fingers trembling. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're not alone." She froze. She looked around the room, the shadows stretching across the walls like tendrils, creeping toward her. She turned off the phone, trying to shake off the unsettling sensation, but her heart raced, and her thoughts spun out of control. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The wind howled louder now, and the rain beat against the windows. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Soft, almost inaudible at first, but then it came again, more insistent this time. Samantha's blood ran cold. Who could be out there in the storm? She hesitated, unsure whether to open the door or ignore it. The knock came again, followed by a low voice. "Samantha, open the door." Her breath hitched. How did they know her name? Her hand shook as she reached for the door handle, but a loud crash echoed from somewhere upstairs. The sound of something or someone falling. Without thinking, she rushed up the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the silent house. She reached the top, her eyes scanning the hallway for any sign of movement. The house was still, too still. Then, she heard it, a whisper, a voice barely audible, but unmistakable. "Help me." Samantha's heart skipped a beat. She turned, looking for the source of the sound, but there was no one. The house seemed empty, yet the voice was unmistakable. The whisper came again, louder this time, and this time, it sounded desperate. "Please help me." Samantha stumbled backward, her legs trembling. She turned to run, but something stopped her, a figure standing at the end of the hallway. A shadow, barely visible in the dim light, but it was there. She took a step forward, her breath catching in her throat. "Who's there?" she called, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't move, but the air grew colder, heavier. It was as though the very atmosphere of the house had changed, thickened with something dark, something ancient. The figure began to move, slowly, almost gliding toward her. As it did, the temperature dropped further. Samantha could see her breath fogging in the air. Suddenly, the figure spoke, its voice chilling. "I never wanted to hurt you, Samantha, but now you're in my world." With a sudden movement, the figure lunged forward, and Samantha screamed. She stumbled backward, but she couldn't escape. It was too fast, too powerful. She felt a cold grip on her wrist, pulling her deeper into the darkness. She closed her eyes, trying to wake from the nightmare, but the grip only tightened. Her vision blurred as the world around her twisted and shifted, reality folding in on itself. Then, as quickly as it had begun, everything stopped. Samantha opened her eyes, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. The storm had passed, and the house was quiet again. But as she looked down at her hands, she saw something was wrong. Her fingers were pale, her skin translucent, like she was fading away. She looked around the room, panic rising in her chest as she realized she wasn't alone, not just in the house, but in her own body. The figure, the shadow, was standing in the corner of the room, watching her with cold, empty eyes. "You are mine now," it whispered, its voice like the rustling of leaves. "And I never let go." The room grew colder, the shadows closing in as she struggled to breathe. But it was no use. The figure reached out once more, its fingers curling around her throat. Everything went black.